Page Punchers!
Superman of Earth 2, Superman, Brainiac, and the Ghost of Zod. These are all the action figures in the latest wave of McFarlane Toys Page Punchers. Each one of these figures comes in a plastic bubble as opposed to the usual McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse type packaging, and they each come with a packed-in trading card and a comic book. What more could we ask for? Well, I suppose we'll find out when we get these bad boys out of the package. And now that they're all out of the package, Val Zod, Kal-El, General Zod, and a Brainiac Drone, we can begin to take a little bit of a closer look. So here is a look at all of those trading cards that came with each one. They're just the covers for the comics. Each one does actually have a data file bio on the back, which is very cool. And they finally got it right with the comic books. Instead of having each comic book with the same story, each issue is a piece to the whole story. It's a collect-to-build comic book, which is what I've been saying all along is what they should have been doing. This is fantastic. They did it. They finally did it. And it's actually not a bad story either. It's a pretty good standalone story. It's worth collecting all 4 figures just to read the story. And of course, yes, all 4 figures. And with Brainiac, after reading the story, it is as I had suspected after just the initial reaction to seeing these figures. This is a Brainiac drone. This isn't actually Brainiac. Which means it's an army builder. Which means I want to get just one more. I want to have 2. Let's look at each one of these individually, first starting with Val Zod over here. Val Zod is a fantastic figure. I really like this. He's got a black wash all over him, and if you're wondering why he has this suit and why Kal-El has the same suit, they're essentially the same sculpt, is because they needed these suits to be able to enter the Phantom Zone and not turn into phantoms. They're essentially like protective armor that gives them a pocket of Earth atmosphere around them. But they're essentially the exact same sculpt, and you'll see that soon enough. Val Zod's symbol is really, really clean, a really smooth symbol. Val Zod Superman's face sculpt is actually pretty good as well. They've done a good job of making him look more or less like he does in the source material that he's based off here, and the paint is basically gone where it's supposed to go. The eyebrows could be a little bit neater. They could have paid a little bit more attention to the eyebrows, but overall this is still very good. I am loving the fact that he has a cloth goods cape. It would be even cooler if it was wired, but still, the fact they gave him a cloth goods cape is still very cool. No S on the back, even though the source material does have the S. No S. And just overall a very cool figure. I'm going to do the articulation segment with Val Zod, and I'm going to skip it with Superman since they have the exact same body bucks. So that is actually a fair amount of torso articulation. I like that very much. You've got these big round sockets right here in his arms. You can see right there. And they don't add to the articulation, but they do kind of cover up, you know, any ugliness the articulation might have. And, oh, I ripped his arm off. I'm always ripping their arm off. We can see some of that black wash in there. Let's just pop his arm back on. So as you can see, the articulation, at least in the arms, is a little stiff. I'm sure that will loosen up with more horsing around with the figure. He can do a pretty good T-pose. And then, of course, when you take the articulation and move it up that way, you're going to get a full range of articulation. He's got a 360 bicep swivel. How good are these elbows? Elbows crunch up nicely. What do we have here? Yeah, that's okay. That could be a bit better, but that certainly could be worse. We have the groin here that McFarlane usually does, McFarlane style groin. Legs are actually fairly articulated. Double jointed knees, crunching up about that. Gigantic feet with the rounded hinge and huge bootly piece of toe articulation. And of course he's got his head, which is on a ball joint. So if you want to get him into a flight pose, that's my real question. With every flight figure, is it a reasonable flight pose? And my answer for this one is yes. That's definitely reasonable. I like that. Now we'll move on to Superman with all of his bits of body armor. So we've already looked at the body for Val Zod, so there's no real reason to have to look at Superman's unarmored body except for to see the S, which will do that. But essentially they're the exact same thing. So I'm going to focus on his armor. The armor that Superman has, the reason why he has these bigger portions right here, it's because this is basically his armor for the Phantom Zone in battle mode. It kind of all goes and it comes out of the armor. It's not like he has to put this on. It's just extra armor pieces that sort of grow out of the suit. So he's got like a claw punching fist here. He's got, look at that. That would be really painful. First of all, just to get punched by that would suck, let alone Superman punching you with that. That would double suck. And of course we have these gigantic shoulder pauldrons. These are really well done. I can't really understand, like, I don't know if Superman would have necessarily made his armor look quite so menacing, but it is still kind of neat. And you have that S right in the front there. Looks like it's been riveted to the front of the suit. And what he's got on his face, this is actually a air purifier. When the suit goes into battle mode, it also gives Superman an air purifier. At least that's what the comic book says. The boot armor attaches by way of these little nubs right here, so we're going to take those off. Just like that. Same thing with the gauntlet armor. They attach by way of these little nubs right here that you fit into the holes. So we're going to take off his gauntlets. And now this would have been the same armor for the Val Zod Platinum, but I will tell you in the source material, he never actually wore this battle armor. He never got it. And then these will come out right here. This is why Val Zod actually has these holes back here. It's because it's the same body buck. And then we're going to take off his torso armor here. Just comes right off like that. And then we have Kal-El's apparatus here. Here's air purifier. I can't see any specific way to pull that off, so I'm just gonna, I don't know how I'm gonna get that off, to tell you the truth. Am I gonna pull his head off? I guess I had to pull his head off to get this off. That's weird. Okay, let's put his head sculpt back on. Ah, there we go. All right, and that is Supes without the armor on. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, it looks pretty awesome. It's, you know, pretty intimidating. If I saw him flying around the Phantom Zone, I'd be like, Supes? Or what happened? Did you just, what happened? Not a bad face sculpt either. I will question why he has a scar across his face, where at no point in the source material does he ever get cut on his face. Does he ever receive a scar? So I feel like that's kind of weird that they decided to give him that. And if he didn't have the scar on his face, this would have been a Superman head sculpt that maybe we could have also used to try to, you know, do some boil and pop head swaps. But that scar is kind of weird. And here's Superman's symbol. This is the only thing I don't like about this figure. It's weird. It doesn't look like this in the source material, and it's just very, very strange. Yeah, it looks like a sneaky snake. Cloth goods cape 2 and no S on the back, just like he has with the source material. Cloth goods cape, only with no S on the back, even though he does have one in the source material. Okay, and now I'm going to move on to General Zod, the Phantom of General Zod. And I think that this is a sick looking figure. It's one that I was going to pass on, and at the last minute, I kind of decided not to. There's just too much sick looking detail on this figure. I will say though, they did decide to paint the front and not the back. See? The front and not the back. That's kind of lame. I wish that they had gone all the way around with that silver paint. Got the Z on his belt, and he's got a purple sash here. He's got all of this Kryptonian detail on his legs here. He's got, this looks like Kryptonian military battle armor, which would make sense since it is General Zod. So yeah, I think that's really neat. He's got this great big shoulder pauldron. I mean, he's a fantastic looking figure. And The face sculpt looks sick. This looks like something out of a 1980s horror movie. This is so cool looking. And I think that this bad boy glows in the dark. Okay, here he is with the lights on, and here he is with the lights out. I had to actually take a picture just because I didn't have him fully charged up, so I prolonged the exposure a little bit, and this is what we got. This is what he would look like. Okay, and we're back just with the lights on. I couldn't do that forever. So yeah, fantastic, fantastic looking figure. I want to find out exactly how articulated this guy is or is not. So, he's very skinny, so I'm hoping we... Oh, yes. Because he's so thin, we get a lot of torso articulation from this guy. Just a lot. And of course the waist is going to go 360 as well. It's a little bit tighter. I'm not going to bother pushing it. The head goes right around. Oh boy, this guy so far has the best articulation. Arms right up because there's nothing to get in the way, and shoulder pauldrons, so he can do that. It's not a T-pose, it's just that. And you're gonna have 360 bicep swivel, crunchy double jointed elbows. What's this guy got on this side? It's still double jointed, and the pauldron moves out of the way, so yeah, that's all right. That's pretty good. And he also has the McFarlane groin, of course, and there is lots and lots of what would be that thigh cut approximation. You've got nicely double jointed knees right there, and then underneath that big, huge chunk of leg armor, you do have a rounded hinge that pivots, and you've got the toe. The toe as always. Oh, and Zod also comes with 2 extra sets of hands. Fists and like open your hands. You know what I mean? Which makes me wonder why he comes with open hands, because he has nothing to grab. There's nothing to hold on to. He didn't come with any accessories other than more hands. And finally, let's look at the Brainiac Drone. The drone looks pretty awesome. There are a lot of these that are just Superman fodder in this story. And I was right. I didn't think that this was actually Brainiac. I really had thought that this looked like a drone. This looked like Brainiac drones. And I was correct. This is a Brainiac drone. And it's probably the coolest looking figure out of the wave, if I'm being honest. Just because, I mean, we'll look at it. Look at the wash over top of this whole thing. Brings out all of that detail in the figure. Very, very fantastic. Now, he came with these separate appendages. These 2 tentacles were separate, and you fit them into these little spots right here. And it's the same thing with these shoulder appendages right here. These little grasping, like 2 little hand and like a little graspy claw. They fit in these little holes right here. No articulation in them. They're just what they are. And then he also came with this quasi-articulated set of pincers that I decided to put here. I'm sure you could put them wherever you wanted to. This is just where I decided to put them. And he's got a fair amount of articulation. Although this right here, this hook at the end, you would think that that's articulated. It's not. It's not articulated. It does nothing. But he does have a double jointed elbow, and this does rotate. It will do 360. And this arm right here, same thing. Way up, double jointed elbow, and one hand. He's got one hand out of all the appendages, one hand that's on a rounded joint. And then his only source of articulation in the body is right down here at the waist. It's a rounded ball joint. It does afford a fair amount of movement, a fair amount of posability. He's got the McFarlane groin, and it's wildly exposed, but gets absolutely nothing as far as rotation up there, which is a little bit sad. I wish that he did. Double jointed knees, and then you've got, of course, the rounded hinge that pivots Does he have a toe? Does he have... No toe articulation at all for this Brainiac guy. So he's not as articulated as I would have hoped he would have been, but he's good enough for someone like me who doesn't really worry that much. And just to get another closer look, like, this is fantastic. This is beautiful. Look at that. Look at that face sculpt. Let's get a nice close-up on this Brainiac Drone's face. That is menacing looking. I like this a lot. So what do I think about this latest wave of McFarlane Toys page puncher action figures? Honestly, I really like Zod, and I really like Brainiac, and of course I like Val Zod and Superman. I do wish that the emblem on Superman was a bit more accurate, and even though Zod's looks really cool, it's not accurate to the comic book, but it's, I believe, accurate to how Val Zod looked in the New 52 during his Earth 2 tenure. And I really do wish that this had have been the time that McFarlane Toys had have taken to give us a regular looking Val Zod, rather than one that is exactly the same as Superman, with the only difference being the hands and the head and the emblem and the color scheme. But overall, I think it's a very solid wave of page punchers. I would place it ahead of the Aquaman wave, but behind the Batman wave. So yeah, it's still a really solid offering. Anyway, those are my thoughts, views, and opinions. Hopefully you found something useful here in this video today, and I will see you in the next one. Have a DC day, everybody, and take care.